Well, good morning and welcome to the Illinois State Police Forensic Science Center in Chicago. I'm here with our Illinois State Police Director, Brendan Kelly, to provide an update on ISP's efforts to identify and catch the perpetrators of murder, shootings, and other crimes on our Chicago area expressways. We're joined by Colonel Margaret McGreal, the Division of Patrol, and ISP District Chicago Commander Captain David Keltner, representing the hundreds of Illinois state troopers who patrol our expressways and work tirelessly to keep the driving public safe. Major Matthew Gaynor and Captain Dan Likens, the Division of Criminal Investigation, who guide our special agents as they vigorously and tenaciously work to identify and pursue justice in these cases. I also want to recognize two officials who could not join us today. Chicago 19th Ward Alderman Matt O'Shea, who has been a tremendous partner in our efforts to eliminate expressway violence, and State Representative Thaddeus Jones, the lead sponsor of the legislation to install expressway cameras and a constant advocate for coordination across our state agencies. The pandemic has been marked by a horrific increase in violent crime in cities across the nation, including on major expressways that run through cities like Chicago. Drivers have had bullets come through their windshields, maiming or killing someone who's just trying to get from point A to point B. It can be anyone, an innocent child in the back seat, a friend you're driving home. These are crimes that are often spilling over from criminal activity or gang disputes that began in Chicago neighborhoods. And the best way to stop them once they enter our highways is to bring the power of the troopers and the technology of the ISP to bear. So I instructed Illinois State Police to provide whatever resources are necessary, and that's exactly what we've done. Since October, ISP has significantly increased their preventative patrol presence on the city's expressways. Those troops on the ground are backed up by the Illinois State Police air operations and K-9 units. Working with the Chicago Police Department and the Department of Homeland Security helicopters and local law enforcement agencies, these ISP units have played a critical role in apprehending the individuals behind these violent crimes. We've also installed state-of-the-art automated license plate readers, with 99 now up and running across the Dan Ryan Expressway and hundreds more. ISP troopers have demonstrated their expertise and their capabilities using their training and new technology to take violent criminals off the streets. Today, we are announcing the charging and apprehension of 20 individuals responsible for homicides and other violent crimes on Chicago area expressways. There has been very good collaboration at all levels to solve these cases, to identify these violent perpetrators and bring them to justice. I applaud the commitment of the men and women of law enforcement who continue working countless hours to investigate and arrest criminals who are bringing violence onto our expressways. If we want to reduce crime, we have to solve crimes. And we have to make the investments in communities to avert the underlying causes of criminal activity. Each year, I've worked with the Illinois General Assembly to rebuild our Illinois State Police by adding hundreds of sworn officers to our forces after their numbers were severely reduced over the last 2 decades. When I first took office, I also reestablished the Division of Criminal Investigations to refocus ISP's resources on taking criminals off the streets. I've increased funding for state police to retrieve firearms from people whose licenses to own a gun have been revoked. And last summer, I signed into law the most comprehensive reform to our state's firearms laws in over a generation, including universal background checks. Stopping the cycle of violence also means tackling poverty and root causes of crime, access to housing, health care, education, and jobs. And as governor, I've more than doubled the funding for violence interruption, diversion, and youth employment programs, and we're expanding those efforts even more in the coming fiscal year. Catching and prosecuting perpetrators can reduce and deter crime right now. And that's what our excellent Illinois State Police troopers, new cameras, and new crime labs are doing. Between the stepped up patrols and the new technology we've brought to bear, anyone, even thinking of committing violent crimes on our expressways ought to be on notice that they're more likely today than ever before to get caught. We will hold nothing back to keep the public safe. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our ISP director, Brendan Kelly, to further elaborate on the cases at hand. Brendan?
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Governor, and welcome to the Illinois State Police Forensic Science Center in Chicago. We are pleased to be here today to announce the results of coordinated investigation and apprehension efforts aimed at holding accountable those responsible for endangering the public by taking violence onto our expressways. Specifically, the charging and apprehension of individuals responsible for 4 separate homicides on Chicago area expressways, as well as charges in numerous cases of fleeing and eluding linked to other violent crimes. Standing with us here today are but a few of the outstanding, humble, and selfless servants of the Illinois State Police, representing the hundreds of Illinois State troopers who work day and night to keep the public safe, our tenacious, smart, and professional special agents who relentlessly pursue justice in these cases, and our ISP crime scene investigators who are but a few of the highly trained, meticulous, sharp-eyed CSI who navigate these particularly daunting crime scenes. Beginning in 2020, we saw the emergence and serious increase of a unique genus and species of violent crime across the country, namely gun violence on expressways, on our urban interstates, including clearly along the expressways right here in the Chicagoland area. Without a doubt, expressway shootings have been singular in their complexity and degree of difficulty when it comes to investigations. Most crime scenes are not moving 70, 80, or 90 miles per hour with hundreds of vehicles traveling through them. Unlike the typical secured crime scene, debris fields may stretch for several hundred yards or even a mile. Victims are often uncertain exactly where the incident even occurred, and witnesses are a challenge to locate. A witness in a nearby vehicle could be driving through Chicago and live 1,000 miles away and may not even realize what occurred next to them or what they observed in relation to the crime. Social media also enables the violent threats and tit-for-tat among individuals or groups in neighborhoods. And in a 21st century cell phone-powered version of dueling, this interpersonal violence is taken out to the expressways. Perpetrators are also using our expressways as an avenue of escape when they have committed other violent crimes, such as aggravated vehicular hijackings in surrounding communities. The ISP has responded to these heinous acts by mobilizing a full spectrum of ISP resources as part of a plan approved by the governor last summer to ensure these violent perpetrators are caught and held accountable. The ISP is working with our federal and local enforcement partners and has increased the number of joint details focusing on high visibility and anti-violence enforcement efforts. Beginning October 1st of 2021, I directed additional troopers from across the state to ongoing details in District Chicago to increase our presence on the Chicago area expressways, increasing our patrol presence over 150% at peak criminal activity times. With the assistance of these additional troopers, ISP has initiated nearly 5,000 traffic stops, 232 driving under the influence arrests, 69 firearm recoveries, 133 criminal arrests, and responded to over 4,900 crashes in the District Chicago area. Additionally, ISPA operations and K-9 units have been deployed in District Chicago, working with CPD and DHS air assets and local law enforcement agencies. These ISP units have played a critical role in the apprehension of aggravated vehicular hijacking suspects who enter our expressways and attempt to elude capture. Every Illinois State Police officer in the Chicago region is aggressively focused on making our expressways safer. Our troopers, crime scene investigators, special agents, and even our pilots are tirelessly pursuing and investigating these cases, working closely with prosecutors on a daily basis. The ISP is mobilizing technology to generate more leads to identify and locate these criminals, including automated license plate readers. The installation of these automated license plate readers has already begun to aid the ISP with intelligence and evidence leading to arrests related to these expressway shootings and aggravated fleeing and eluding violations that are also tied to aggravated vehicular hijacking and other violent crimes in the community. Last summer, we began a concerted effort to coordinate with our prosecutorial partners on expressway crimes. In mid-January of this year, in 2022, in a collaborative effort involving ISP DCI Zone 1, the ISP Division of Patrol, District Chicago, the ISP Special Weapons and Tactics Team, or SWAT, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Violent Crimes Fugitive Task Force, and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office Felony Review Unit, multiple arrest warrants have been issued and arrests made for crimes related to expressway shootings and aggravated and fleeing and eluding incidents. On January 27, 2022, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office approved one count of first-degree murder against a 31-year-old male who remains in custody with no bond. On December 19, 2021, ISP officers responded in this case to an Interstate 57 northbound at 159th Street, where they learned a 35-year-old male sustained life-threatening injuries from gunfire, to which he later succumbed at the hospital. And throughout the course of that lengthy investigation, ISP DCI Zone 1 agents identified the suspect in the fatal expressway shooting. On January 31st, 2022, the ISP DCI Zone 1 arrested a 31-year-old male of Chicago, Illinois for one count of first-degree murder, one count of armed robbery, and one count of aggravated vehicular hijacking for his involvement in an expressway shooting and armed robbery and a carjacking that occurred on January 30th in 2021. That killed a 37-year-old Chicago male on the Division Street ramp to Interstate 90. They immediately began a thorough and exhaustive investigation, which included extensive coordination with CPD, during which ISP agents learned that the defendant was allegedly involved in an armed robbery, aggravated vehicular hijacking, which both occurred in Chicago approximately 4 hours prior to this fatal expressway shooting. That defendant is also now being held at Cook County Jail. In May of 2021, ISP District Chicago responded to a reported homicide that took place on the Chicago Expressway. After a complete investigation, DCI Zone 1 agents identified an offender and obtained an arrest warrant for first-degree murder in this year, January 2022. In another expressway shooting, resulting in a fatality that occurred December 13, 2021, we now have a person in custody at the Illinois Department of Corrections, and the Felony Review Unit has authorized involuntary manslaughter charges against that defendant. On January 31st, 2022, a 19-year-old male of Hammond, Indiana, was arrested for attempted murder for his involvement in an expressway shooting that occurred December 15, 2021, on Interstate 94, in which a 32-year-old male of Chicago, Illinois, sustained non-life-threatening injuries from gunfire. The suspect was identified by our special agents, and with the assistance of the FBI Fugitive Task Force, we took him into custody in Indiana and is being extradited to Illinois. On January 19, 2022, ISP DCI Zone 1 obtained an arrest warrant for a suspect involved in an aggravated vehicular hijacking incident which occurred on November 23, 2021. On January 26, ISP this year, DCI Zone 1 obtained an arrest warrant for a suspect involved in an armed robbery which occurred on July 2, 2021. Both suspects are currently wanted and being pursued as we speak. In addition to these arrests just mentioned, since October of 2021 of last year, our Zone 1 agents arrested 5 individuals for their alleged involvement in expressway shootings, which included an arrest on November 23, 2021 for attempted murder, an arrest on December 3, 2021 for attempted murder, an arrest on October 23, 2021 for aggravated discharge of a firearm, an arrest on December 19, 2021 for aggravated discharge of a firearm, and an arrest on October 28, 2021 for reckless discharge of a firearm. From pursuits of vehicles on Chicago expressways in 2021, on January 27th of this year, a 24-year-old male of Chicago, Illinois, was arrested for aggravated fleeing and eluding and received a bond of $50,000 at Cook County Jail. On January 28th of this year, a 29-year-old female of Chicago, Illinois, was arrested for aggravated fleeing and eluding and received a bond of $75,000 at Cook County Jail. On January 31st of this year, a 27-year-old male of Chicago, Illinois, was indicted for aggravated fleeing and eluding, who is already in custody at the Cook County Jail. On January 31st of this year, a 23-year-old male of Harvey, Illinois, was indicted for aggravated fleeing and eluding, also in custody now at the Cook County Jail. And on February 3rd, 2022, a 29-year-old female of Chicago, Illinois, was arrested for aggravated fleeing and eluding and received a bond for $75,000 at the Cook County Jail. Additional arrest warrants for aggravated fleeing and eluding that occurred in 2021, last year, have been issued, and we are seeking the public's assistance to locate these individuals. Tony L. Clark, a 23-year-old male of Chicago, Illinois; Jahari Densmore, a 19-year-old male of Chicago, Illinois; and Lester Larkin, a 31-year-old male of Decatur, Illinois. And just this weekend, Illinois State Police District Chicago troopers responded to a vehicle pursuit involving a suspect firing shots at the police until the suspect crashed at 137th and Utica in Robbins, where the suspect was taken into custody. Zone 1 investigations responded and continued the investigation by obtaining surveillance footage from local police agencies, interviewing the suspect, and obtaining search warrants. And interviews of multiple police officers were conducted, and ISP obtained charges of attempted murder of a police officer, among other offenses, just this weekend. All of these acts show a complete contempt for human life. My appreciation goes out to the Felony Review Unit supervisors and prosecutors for working with ISP to help hold these violent offenders responsible, and also to the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office that just recently charged a defendant with aggravated discharge of a firearm and related charges arising out of a tollway shooting incident in 2021. In addition, building upon our already strong partnership with the United States Attorney's Office, I'm glad to share that in select ISP cases where convicted felons possess firearms on expressways, federal prosecutors will consider expedited prosecutions that could result in immediate federal detention and lengthy federal prison sentences for the most dangerous individuals. Further reason that violent offenders should think twice before taking a firearm on the expressway. I'd also like to extend the heartfelt gratitude of the Illinois State Police to the Illinois Department of Transportation, their emergency traffic patrol. They protect the lives of our troopers when they shut down the lanes in order for our folks to safely collect the evidence we need to build a solid case. As a result of these hard-fought investigative efforts, with our law enforcement partners, these dangerous individuals will now be held accountable for the violence and disruption they have caused on Chicago area expressways. And it cannot be said enough. Thank you to all our ISP officers, including our troopers, our pilots, our K-9 teams, our special agents, our crime scene investigators, our SWAT team members, the FBI Violent Crimes Fugitive Task Force, and all local law enforcement agencies who continue to support the mission of public safety and justice for all. The work of the ISP never ends, and we are nowhere near done with this effort. But with the support of stable budgeting, dedicated resources, and increased manpower, our ability to meet the moment and to solve cases that are seemingly unsolvable will continue to grow stronger. The ISP is adapting every day and improving our investigative and apprehension efforts to combat these terrible crimes every day. And the message from the Illinois State Police today is simple. If you engage in violence on our expressways, you will be identified, you will be found, you will be arrested, and you will be charged with the most serious offense under the law. With that, I'm happy to now take questions regarding these investigations.
Director Kelly, do you have and there could probably be a million answers to this question. There's probably not one right answer. But there have been gang problems in Chicago for 100 years. Do you have a feeling for why these gang disputes are now spilling down onto the concrete that is now your jurisdiction?
I think there are many factors, and you're right, there is a complicated answer, but there are two things which I think that are common themes in these cases. One is that we know in many of the neighborhoods where some of that gang activity or other violent crime has often occurred, we know that there are a lot of cameras everywhere. We know that people have Ring doorbells. They have cameras at the gas station, or a camera in front of a business, or a camera in front of people's houses. And we also know that law enforcement has a variety of cameras in certain areas. And by not having that type of asset on the interstate, there's obviously going to be a differential, and that means people have a sense that if they go on the interstate, then maybe they're not going to be caught on a camera. That's changing as a result of the license plate readers that we're installing. Those LPRs are not just photographs that are taken, they're video as well, but they have an application and software, and then allows us to read the license plate and be able to match that and correlate that with the other information we have. One other common thing, as I mentioned, what has changed and what is a factor and that's driving some of this activity is social media. People who have issues with one another, whether it's gangs that are maybe fighting with one another, or people that even know each other that have some beef or some dispute, Like I said, it's almost like a modern form, 21st century form of dueling. They say horrible things to each other on social media. They threaten one another. And they say, let's take that out to the E-way. So let's take this out to the Expressway. And almost like Main Street in the Old West, they're using these expressways for this type of violence. But that's why adding this additional presence from our Illinois State Police, who are on patrol, adding this technology and allowing that license plate reader technology to give real-time information to our troopers that are out on patrol, as well as using our air operations, as well as using all the assets that we have to be able to apprehend and deter this type of crime. That's why we're continuing to evolve. We saw this phenomenon occurring. It's occurring on a lot of urban interstates around the country. I talked to my counterparts across the country. They're dealing with similar phenomenons in similar environments. But that is a factor. It's just the social media that's driving these disputes, and people are using social media to film themselves out on the expressway. So that's why technology is a factor, and why we have to use technology to try to stop them.
I've mentioned the timing of the increase coming post-pandemic, or since the start of the
Sure.
pandemic. Any theories as to why that would be?
I think there are again, so many different factors that are occurring all at the same time. And as for this particular issue, this is our territory. You know, we're responsible for the expressways. This is a unique history that the Illinois State Police have with this area. We don't have this type of dynamic where we're exclusively responsible for the interstates in other parts of the state, but that's an agreement that goes back to the 1980s, where the Illinois State Police have that responsibility. So this is our territory. This is our problem. This is our challenge to meet. We are going to defend our expressways from this type of violence, and we're going to protect the public on the expressways with all the resources that we have. But looking at those factors, those are some of the things that we're able to see are driving it. What's driving a larger dynamic? The issues of criminal justice, the issues of how we protect public safety, those are all very complex problems. But what I can tell you is what I just told Phil, those are common factors in this particular criminal factor. There's always three parts to fighting crime. There's either you have to identify the victim, you have to identify the suspect, or you have to have a law enforcement intervention in between those two. And if you break it down as simple as that, in this case, we have to have a deterrent effect by having our law enforcement present. I will tell you, every time we've had people on patrol, our folks out there, only once has a shooting occurred within the line of sight of our troopers. So when they're out there, that's a visual deterrent. That drives people's decision making, their risk analysis about whether they're going to go out on the expressway and shoot a firearm. So that's why we've added these additional personnel. And you can see the number of traffic stops, you can see the number of criminal arrests that we're making. That's having an effect. But these things do take time, and we're just going to continue to grow our presence out there and continue to empower them with technology. Yes, ma'am.
20 arrests in October. I wanted to make sure I heard you right. 4 have resulted in homicide charges?
So there were 4 individual homicides.
Okay.
3 of those resulted in murder charges. 1 of those resulted in an involuntary manslaughter charge.
I want to make sure I understand your answer on one thing.
Yes, sir.
You believe, and I understand it's probably a theory.
Yeah.
You believe that the bad guys know there are cameras in the neighborhoods, know there's,
Sure.
and they are potentially either flushing their quarry down to the expressway where they can get them there without being observed? That you think that might be what's happening?
That is a factor we know as we've talked to some people involved in these, as we get other intelligence from our partners in federal law enforcement or from CPD. That's a chatter that is out there. But what we do know is by adding the license plate readers, we are starting to see where we add those, and we let people know this is the area that we're adding these. This is, you should be aware that we're using this technology here. That can have a deterrent effect and alter the decision-making process about whether or not you want to do that. But look, as we know, criminals are going to sometimes do these horrible, evil things that they do, regardless of whether or not we have technology in place. So we have to use the technology to try to hold them accountable.
Governor, can we get your thoughts on the mask ruling?
But yeah, I want to just make a statement before I take questions. And thank you very much to the Director and to all of our ISP troopers that are here today and all who work here at the lab. So I do want to take a moment to talk about the ruling in the Sangamon County Circuit Court regarding safety measures that we've been taking in our Illinois public schools. Judge Raylene Grishow's ruling is out of step with the vast majority of legal analysis in Illinois and across the nation. Most importantly, it constrains the ability of the named school districts to maintain safe in-person learning requirements, as if kids need a minute more of remote learning when there are common sense tools that we have to reduce and prevent it. The judge's decision cultivates chaos for parents, families, teachers, and school administrators across the state. And I've asked Attorney General Kwame Raoul to seek to have the ruling overturned with all possible speed. For millions of Illinoisans, wearing masks has never been about what was required by the governor or any other authority. No. Masks are, for most people anyway, have been about doing what's right. For yourself, for your loved ones, for others, for your community as a whole. Nowhere is that more true than in schools. Community hubs where parents and grandparents, teachers and staff interact with each other every day. Hundreds and even thousands of people in a community are affected when there's an outbreak in a school that's gone maskless. That affects not only whether a school will go remote, but also whether workers at local businesses will get sick, and therefore whether those businesses can stay open. The Illinois schools that have not been named as a defendant in the lawsuit should continue to follow the prescribed public health protocols, which have proven to reduce school exclusion rates and have made it possible for our kids to continue learning safely in person. The districts who have reached a shared understanding with their labor unions must continue to follow the public health requirements in those agreements as well. Masks work, which is why Illinois is leading the Midwest in its pandemic response. Masks keep kids safely in school in person, which we all want. Across the state, the nation, and the world, the evidence is there whether or not you want to look at it. In the moment that we're in right now, masks are a proven tool, not a new feature of life, but a tool to get us through this time. By and large, the people of Illinois have kept their masks on to keep everyone safe. And thankfully, we've seen our COVID metrics go in the right direction. We've already seen northeastern states where Omicron hit first, like New Jersey, see the signs that they need to lift these protocols, namely decreased hospitalizations. As Dr. Ezike and I cautiously noted for a few weeks from now, our COVID rates are also moving in the right direction. And as I said last week, I hope to provide some additional guidance in coming days as we continue to evaluate the numbers. As we've been doing from the start, we are following the science. As for this specific case, poor legal reasoning should not take one of our most effective tools off the table. So again, I've asked the Attorney General to continue to aggressively appeal this decision so that school districts can do what they need to do to keep students, staff, and community safe. And happy to take any questions about
Governor,
that.
part of the argument was that you made this decision and they felt there wasn't due process. They felt that you hadn't consulted the legislature and parents. Do you regret not having a more collaborative approach before you made this ruling?
That was not
for your mandate?
that was not the legal argument that was made. The legal argument had to do with a particular law that's in place they're referring to that requires due process 48 hours after someone is asked to wear a mask. And they've misread, the judge has misread this, the people who are suing have misread this. The fact is that, again, we know that masks work. We know that I have consulted with legislators throughout the pandemic, Republicans and Democrats. I've pointed out to many people that the very earliest moment when we put a mask requirement in was a moment in which I went to discuss this with a Republican legislator. And actually he was very encouraging about this is something we need to do right now. The minority leader in the House, someone else who also believed that we needed to be very careful in our schools. Again, this is all conversation that's been going on for quite some time now. The legislature has had an opportunity to weigh in. People have weighed in various ways. There are bills even being considered now in the legislature, and I'll continue to evaluate those and see what gets passed. And the goal here is to get through this pandemic, keeping people safe and healthy and alive.
Okay, so the governor of New Jersey, Democrat, just announced that no more masks in schools beginning the second week of March. Everyone wants to know, what metrics are you going to use to remove mask mandates in schools and in the state and get rid of the vaccine passport?
Hospitalizations. I've been saying that for quite some time now. As you know, we reached an all-time high in hospitalizations at around 7,400. Even with Omicron, which was less virulent than previous strains of the virus. And so out of abundance of caution, we've always said, let's look at where we were. Think about, where we were when the mask requirements were removed last summer. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I think we all were very optimistic. We saw those numbers, take a dive, the hospitalization numbers take a dive. We watched very carefully. We saw for 2 incubation periods that things kept moving in the right direction. And indeed, I believe on June 11th, we removed mask mandates. Then, as you saw, a month and a half later or so, we saw these numbers start to rise, became concerned in particular about schools coming back in and the transmission of the virus through schools into communities. And so we began to ask people to put masks back on. That's going to be something we're going to have to consider all the way along here, even if we remove the requirement that people wear masks in various settings. There may come a time in the future when we would want people to put their masks back on. That's why we're fighting this case and appealing this case.
What numbers? Could you be more specific? Where should the hospitalizations be?
Well, significantly below the peak that we were at. We're, as you know, a little less than about half of what that number was. And so, again, we're watching very carefully. I'm listening to the doctors about what numbers they believe are correct. And no doubt we are heading in the right direction. So you'll be hearing more about that.
Dr. Ezike keeps saying if we hit 400 cases a day, we'll drop the mask mandate. Is it her decision or is it your decision? Because last I checked, she's not an elected official, but every week when we go to the press conference, she says,
do you want non-scientists, non-doctors to make decisions that will affect seriously the health and lives of the people of Illinois with an epidemic that we have seen, a pandemic that we have seen? The answer is yes, of course, the ultimate decision is mine, but you want me listening to the best experts that we have, and I do, and it includes our Department of Public Health, but also, as you know, we've got some of the best epidemiologists in the world here in Illinois at private institutions, at public institutions, and I rely upon them as well, talking to them on a regular basis. Marnie.
Governor, what do you tell superintendents right now who are trying to figure out what to do? I mean, are there tools the state can give them? Are there updates on when you think there's going to be a decision? My kid's superintendent was saying, imploring parents, not to send their kids to school without masks. So, for the people on the front lines, what can you help them with?
Well, the judge has created a tremendous amount of confusion, even in the way she wrote her decision. So that has been problematic. We've asked and did, in fact, have the Attorney General's staff talking to the staffs of schools all across the state over the weekend to give them, their best advice and allowing them to make decisions for themselves, of course. But we want to make sure that we're getting an appeal heard as soon as possible so that we can, rid ourselves of the fog of a frankly not good decision by the Sangamon County Court.
Governor, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head when you said, you said cultivates confusion. I mean, this is a note from my daughter's own school superintendent from last night, where they said until we get clarification, students can make their own choice regarding wearing masks in our school buildings. So they are saying it's up to you now.
Well, the school districts, no. At this point, this is not a decision for the governor. This is a decision that was made by a Sangamon County Circuit Court that needs to run its course in the judiciary, and it's being appealed immediately. So we hope to have answers very soon. We're asking for very quick decisions about, remember, it's a decision about a TRO, not about the case itself. So it's really a question about a temporary restraining order that she's put in. And so we're hoping to have that reversed. And of course, she's been asked to reverse it. That's the first part of the process. And then the appeals court is asking. That's all happening in a very compressed amount of time.
But are school districts wrong to be sending a message like that? I mean,
There are school districts, yeah, sure, but school districts are making the decision, as I have suggested, to continue on with their mask policies. Many school districts are. Some are, because of the advice they're getting from their own attorneys in their school districts, are making different decisions. I would say, listen, you ought to err on the side of protecting everybody in the school, and particularly all the people who interact with the school. That's the goal here. That was always the goal. But let's remember what we're really talking about. This is a tool. Masks are a tool for us to deal with a virus that no one has been able to get complete control of. We have vaccines, thank goodness, which help an awful lot, as you know. And we want to encourage everybody to get vaccinated because that really will keep these numbers down. But the more you've got maskless people interacting in large spaces together, if we start to see an uptick because there's a new variant, we're going to be in deep trouble if we don't have the ability to have people put their masks back on.
This
It has
isn't about
become a
masks, it's about
political
vaccines.
argument as well, obviously.
Sure.
Your opponents are going to,
Yeah, there's one that isn't even vaccinated and says he won't get vaccinated. So
they're gonna say you created the chaos, not the judge. I mean,
No,
that's just how it
the
goes.
chaos-
That's
the
how it
cha-
goes political.
let's start with this. This virus created chaos. Let's face it. I mean, all of our lives have been upended by a virus that no one expected. And then the question is, what is the human reaction? What is our community, our state's reaction to that? And we have reacted in a way that has saved lives. And we have the best rate of vaccinations in the Midwest. We have a tremendous record of keeping people healthy and alive during this terrible time that we've been in. And it's because we have these tools, right? There's an additional tool, right? There's testing, there are vaccinations, there's masking. There's an additional tool that we now are about to get, and it's already arrived in some places, and that's new treatments. We had some treatments that were good for previous variants. We now have new treatments, some of them oral treatments, that are going to become much wider available, and I think that will help us even more to remove mitigations.
Governor, you knew that a ruling was coming on this one way or another. Why wasn't there guidance ready to announce on Friday, or even sooner perhaps, about what schools and teachers and parents should do in response to a situation like the one we're in right now?
Well, this is the guidance actually we've been giving all along, which is these are the things that are the tools that can be used to keep everybody healthy. But we've provided the same guidance. People should wear their masks in schools. Teachers, staff members, students, et cetera. It's the same guidance I'm giving you today.
But I'm speaking to the confusion that schools are now facing today in terms of, well, which one do we do? What do we follow here? Why wasn't there guidance announced for how in specific, who they should listen to? Should they listen to your guidance, or should they listen to what a parent wants for their own kid, or how they should handle that situation?
Well, we had mitigations in place, as you know. These are requirements, and so that was the guidance. That is the guidance continuing to be. The fact that a judge made a poor decision about this has caused disruption. There's no reason why people should follow the decision if they're not subject to that decision.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.